Good afternoon. If you've been following the ThoughtWorks live agenda for the last couple of weeks, you'll notice that this slot has changed twice. I'd like to thank Richard Manners for being here, and I'd like to thank Dave Darby for landing me with his slot and most of his slides. But he does have a very valid business reason for not being here today, so hopefully I'll be able to pick that up from Dave. And I promise I won't exploit that position in terms of talking about their business. So in this half-hour slot, we just want to talk about some of the things that we're seeing in retail, which are really interesting, which I guess put forward or support a lot of the things that we've been talking about today in terms of big data and mobile in retail. So I guess we are now intentionally focusing on retail. It's been a big part of ThoughtWorks work over the last few years. So whether we're moving store infrastructure to the cloud for the Gap to help them expand faster internationally, whether we're optimizing inventory for Morrisons to help them to remove significant portions of cost out of their business, or whether we're just taking a traditional retail business or model like the Co-op and helping them to launch their new digital experience online, or even looking at more frugal retail models in Africa. We do now have a good view of the different aspects and challenges that face this industry and really epitomise this fragmented future. So we are going to hear today from Richard Manners about the work that we're doing at Morrisons. I'll talk a little bit about JD Sports in terms of what we're doing to help them transform the store experience using mobile. I don't think we're going to get time to talk about Gruppo PAM, but Marco Bon is over from Italy. We're doing some amazing work and building on some of the things that John talked about in big data and analytics. So just to put this session into context, and it kind of brings together a whole bunch of things that we've already looked at this morning. It's an axis of adaptive, and I guess on the right-hand side there, this is the traditional retail organisation. It's the bricks and mortar business that's been built, in some cases over, let's say, around 100 years. Tools, processes, people, technology are all built around the lowest cost operating model. And they're built around moving as efficiently as possible stock from distribution centres and warehouses onto shelves and onto racks. What we actually have now is at the other end of that axis is a customer who is looking for a responsive and empowered experience with the retailer. So actually, I think more than any other industry right now, this really characterises this dichotomy of thriving in a fragmented future. But actually, we see this day to day. It plays out very well in the retail space, but this internet availability and smart and mobile phone technology is actually driving uprising. It's driving revolutions in the availability and the ability to communicate messages that we're just not able to do previously. And even in some of the, I guess, catastrophic events in Boston, we saw how the media industry is now itself adapting to not having to have the reporter there within 5 minutes of the incident occurring. Actually, most of the content now is sourced from people's smartphones. So actually, most of the media footage that's pulled together is actually collected from people's mobile devices. So in a cultural sense, in a retail sense, we're seeing a social and cultural revolution, and we've heard over and over again today at unprecedented pace. I guess there's a bunch of us in here. So earlier this year, we attended NRF, which is the world's largest retail technology conference. I've been for several years now, and I tend to use it as a barometer really to see, what retailers are feeling, what's most important to them, and certainly some of the things that came through, we've talked about today, and you'll hear more about this afternoon. It's big data, it's cloud, it's mobile. But when we actually got underneath that, what we actually found, particularly in the retail sense, that the overwhelming thing was time to market. It's how do I cope with all of these different channels and expectations from the customer, and how do I figure out what the right thing is to deliver to market in a much faster way. So the social cultural revolution aspect was nicely summarised at NRF by Kofi Annan, who was the keynote. So this is how big this event is and how big this industry is in both the US and a global sense. And he spoke about 3 pillars. So we have 3 pillars, and I thought it was interesting that he talked about what was important for a prosperous society. And he said, I've come to the conclusion that stable, dynamic, and democratic societies have to be built on 3 pillars: peace, stability, and development, a rule of law, and a respect for human rights. I think he was over-keen with his commas, or I just miscounted, but I actually counted 5 pillars. But I'm certainly not going to split hairs with Kofi Annan. But actually, he went on to express the power of the retail industry to affect change in particularly emerging markets. And again, he said, first, retailers need to integrate a smaller scale farmer and individual businessmen and women into their supply chains. This increases living standards and contributes to economic and social stability. Second, companies that enter the developing world need to make a concerted effort to source their materials locally, wherever possible. Firms must do their research and resist the urge to import and source all their material. Third, he suggested that retailers entering developing markets should invest in their local partners when possible, either directly or through public or private partnerships. And this is something that we, in ThoughtWorks see as being very important. And we're going to hear from Camphor this afternoon about how, I guess, the NGO world is applying these approaches. So when we think about the axis of adaptive, we're going to start our journey at the efficient end, and we're going to hear from Morrisons about how big data and mobile is really helping them to improve the efficiency of their business. Invariably, if I leave my smartphone and my tablet on the coffee table at home, my children will pick that up, and there'll typically be several new apps on my device. I'm not particularly keen on Kiss Me Justin Bieber, but actually I did like 4 Picks 1 Word, which is a great boredom killer app if you want to look for that. That's my really rubbish segue to Morrisons, which is an order pad, a selection of tablets, some wireless, and a cow. I'll hand over to Richard.
Thank you, Mark. Afternoon, everyone. My name is Richard Manners. I'm the Retail Improvement Director at Morrisons. So I'm not a technical person. I'm part of the retail team. What I'm responsible for is working out how we spend money on wages in the business. So we spend about £1.3 billion a year on wages, and I was trying to work out which stores it should go to, how we should spend that money in stores, and then how we can make sure that we need less of it next year by the way we change our processes. So for those, I'm guessing not everyone here knows Morrisons. So for those of you who do, I hope you'll forgive me. We are the number 4 food retailer in the UK. We've got about 500 shops. We have sales of about £13 billion, and we operate from Bradford in West Yorkshire, which is about 200 miles north of here. We employ about 120,000 people. And there are a few things about Morrisons that make us quite different from most of our competitors. The first is that we are really only a grocer. We don't have a hypermarket business. We have only the beginnings of a convenience business. We don't sell food online yet. We will one day, but we don't yet. The other thing that's unique about us is that we are very vertically integrated for a retailer, for a modern retailer. So we own and run our own abattoirs, our own food packing plants, our own fish packing plants. We cook our own hams, we slice our own hams, we make our own pies, we ship them all to the stores. Those of you who've been close to British retail in the last 6 months will appreciate just how comforting it was to know that almost every animal we sell has been patted on the nose by one of my colleagues. So we could be really sure that it mooed. That was good news. The other part of our business, which is very traditional, is that we make a lot more of our own food in store than most of our competition. So if you come into one of our stores and you buy a piece of meat, it will have been cut and wrapped in that store. If you buy cake, it will have been made in that store. If you buy bread, it will have been baked from scratch in that store. If you eat in our cafe, it will have been cooked. They've got a proper kitchen and we actually cook food. We don't just reheat it. That's quite an expensive model, and we know that's quite an expensive model, but we think that customers value it, and we think they will increasingly value it. And so a lot of the work we do around efficiency is trying to make sure that we can protect our ability to go on delivering what we think is important to customers by taking out cost elsewhere. Another side of that traditional approach is that until relatively recent, until the last 3 or 4 years probably, Morrisons has taken a very traditional approach to managing productivity. So it's been very much about making sure you've got the right people in the right place and that they're working hard. And we haven't really thought hard about how we change the operating model to make the business easier to run. And over the last 3 or 4 years, we've started that journey. And the particular part that I want to talk about today is how we order products for the stores. So we have a process called the order pad. And I think that journey shows how quickly we now think we can move and where we started from. So this is an order pad. And no, I didn't think it was going to be a piece of paper and a biro either when I joined Morrisons. But the way we order most of the products for the stores is that we print out this pile of paper once a week. We split it into these folders. So there's one folder for each aisle of the store, like this. And then somebody has to walk around the shop with a biro going, I want 2 of those, 3 of those, 1 of those, 5 of those. It is, these days, that is quite an unusual way of ordering stock. And so once you've done that, you have to hand over the pad, and it has to then be typed in by an administrator. We've got somebody who sits there and taps in, so 3 of those, 4 of those, 2 of those. I think we're unique in the UK, possibly in Europe, in doing it this way. What's interesting, and the reason that we didn't just turf all this out, is that there is a genuine trade-off to be made when you're trying to work out how to order products into a retail environment. And the trade-off is between having accountability in store, so you can hold the store accountable for what's there, how much they've got, whether it's in stock, and so you keep accountability at the store. The trade-off is that you centralize it, you get better decision-making systems, and you can take an end-to-end view so you can manage the impact on the rest of your supply chain of what people order and when they order it. What we were trying to do was to get to the point where we could keep the accountability but lose some of the cost, essentially. And so when you take this, I'm so glad you can't read this. Broadly what you have, this is a page out of the order pad. So you have, these are all the products. This is the sales for the last 6 weeks. If there's excess stock, that will show up in here. This tells you what's on promotion, and you write in your 3, 4, 5, 6 items. And that pad is built up. We connect to the mainframe. We get the products that are available to the store. We pull them into the mainframe. That then prints the products. You populate it with the sales recently. That all happens over 2 or 3 days. We then print that out in a store on a Friday or a Saturday. You give it to stores, and then they've got that for a week, and they walk around and they do orders every day. Very, very clunky. So we said we want to make that electronic. So we started off thinking maybe a handheld terminal. So we, as many retailers do, we have a little handheld terminal that you walk around. You can do stock checks. You can do availability checks. You can check that you've got pricing and the right tickets and all of those things. What it didn't give you, just in terms of screen real estate, was the opportunity to see the sort of things that we're used to seeing in this model. We then came up with our computer on wheels. Seriously, this exists. We've built some of them. We looked at it and we decided that didn't feel very modern. But we did have a proposal where we were going to have people pushing these PCs around the shop floor with batteries. And in some ways, actually, it's quite neat in the sense that it does all the things you want it to do. It's a platform that we're familiar with working with, and it felt relatively painless. What we ended up with was this, which is obviously a slightly better model. It's a tablet. And to some extent, that's us being rescued by the timing, which is to say that this tablet, this is from our trial store. These were almost double the price and more than double the weight of the ones we're rolling out with 9 months later. And we know that that's going to go on happening. So that's what we got to. Let's talk a little about the journey. So the first thing we had to do was to try and build a business case. And this is, it won't surprise you, this is something that had been on our minds for a long time, off and on. How can we make this work electronically? So what we wanted to try and do was to find a way in which what we'd struggled to do was to find a way to deliver the benefits fast enough that we could be confident that we were investing in the right thing. So not taking a sort of heavyweight traditional IT approach, but having to get much more agile. So we did that. And we set up a little team for delivery, and we basically nominated a couple of product owners who were going to be the driving thinking behind what the product needed to do. And then we worked with the team from ThoughtWorks, and we got very, very quickly to this is what we need to build. Let's define what's the smallest and simplest and lightest product we think we can put in a shop and try and run a shop with. And how quickly can we do that? And the answer was about 4 months, which, to give you some context, is slightly less than the testing cycle for the last update we did for the till system. So we got to the point where it was working in the store. And then once it was working in the store, we then got into an iterative try it, fix it. Try it, fix it, try it, fix it, round and round. And so we continued to improve in a single store. And actually, what we'd said when we set out was that we'll put this into a single store. We did this last autumn. And then we'll take it out for Christmas, and we'll come back with a more resilient system, copied from the MVP, the minimum viable product, in the new year. And we went back to the store in November and said to them, so should we take it out? Leave it. We know it's not very robust. We know it doesn't have much resilience because it's a single point system, but it's so much easier, we want to keep it. And if you're in the business of trying to manage productivity in a large organization, that is not a thing you hear very often. Almost always, like, this is terribly hard work, actually. Trying to do things differently is a big burden. And it wasn't at all. They loved it. And they continue to love it. So we've moved in from one store. We're now in about 10. By the end of the month, we'll be in 35. By the end of September, we'll be in 500. And what we're going to roll out will be about 50% different from what we first said back here when we sat around and worked out what the spec was. But we've done it in a way that has been sufficiently painless for the store that they've almost not noticed. So we've got to a position where we are dripping out mini releases every couple of weeks or so. And so the user experience is much more like, I think it's much more like using a good webmail system, actually. So you log in one day, and it looks a bit different, and you go, oh, what's that? Oh, I get it, yeah, okay. And on they go. And we've almost stopped telling the stores. Not quite, but we are almost at the point where we're just not even going to tell them that we're doing a release. So there isn't this huge amount of release planning. It's just do it, test it, let it go. And if the changes are small enough and intuitive enough, you almost don't need to train it. And that's a massive, massive benefit if you've got a system which, so this system will be used by about 13,000 people. So if we really have to do a training program every time we do a release, that will make our lives much more difficult. So what we've got is this. This is essentially all the information that you had on the old screen, on the old paper pad, but all the numbers are up to date. They're not what you had a week ago last Thursday when we printed out the paper one. It is, it runs on a browser, so it's entirely device agnostic, which is good because, as I said, we found that the device we're rolling out on now is different from the one that we spec'd it for, and will be different again when we come to do new stores next year. And the people who use it smile. They really do. And where we've got to is that this is a program that's had it's got a 2-year payback, slightly less than 2-year payback for the whole program. And it also brings to us, I think this is almost the more exciting thing, it then becomes a platform for future development. So at the moment, we have a thing which does something nice and simple and functional and pays for itself, and we're quite pleased with that. But over time, when you start thinking about, now I've got this live system, I can start feeding the supply chain earlier in the day with what are my emerging orders from people who've got ahead of themselves and done it early. That helps them plan their depot pick, and they're trying to pick and work out who's going to put what onto which truck. We can, because we've got live sales, we can start writing recommended orders for the stores so that they can get closer to a, yeah, that's fine approach when they're thinking about how much of this stock, this product do I need, and further away from, oh, I wonder how much of this I want. Once you've got that, you can then start using those recommended orders to say to the supply chain team, well, probably, on average, they're going to order what we recommend. The stores still keep their flexibility and their agility, but the supply chain team don't get hit by sudden spikes in demand. And the current process does sometimes drive some pretty startling spikes in demand. There was a day, the Jubilee week last year, so over the Queen's 60th Jubilee, some of you may remember we had a shocking spring. We then had 2 nice days of sunshine. Everybody got very excited about the weather, and our order teams got very, very excited about the weather. And on the Wednesday of Jubilee week, they ordered more product than they'd ordered for any single day the preceding Christmas. And I happened to be in one of our biggest depots on the morning. I was just meeting when the volumes came through for that morning, and I've never seen such a terrified-looking group of logistics people trying to work out how they were going to ship that volume with literally, I think, so they found that out at 9 o'clock in the morning, and it all had to be out the door by 10 that night. And they did manage it, just about, but it was a very difficult experience for them, and we hope that we'll stop that happening again. So then the final step is that you end up with a tablet device that looks like this, probably slightly cheaper than Mark's iPad, which is clearly what's photographed here, and we start being able to say, actually there's a set of apps that you can use, and you can walk around the store, and as a store manager, you can get most of the information you need. And in the long run, what this drives is it drives us away from having an office of people and doing administrative jobs in the store, and allowing those people to get out onto the shop floor, working nearer customers where they can be helpful to customers, and actually, mostly, we hope they'll do a better job because they're in the shop where the customers need them to be. Thank you very much.
So what we learned from this example and what we're seeing across the industry is I guess traditional approaches would take a long time. So we try and buy a solution off the shelf and try and integrate that into our ecosystem, and that would take a long time. So we took a very different approach here to actually get to the it's our normal approach. We get to the smallest set of features that we can possibly live with to go live, and we learned so much from that by actually doing that and being in a store. So I guess some of the new characteristics that we see around this responsive retail organisation are brought forward in the bottom part of the triangle. And on top of that, we then have reliable on-demand releases, which do leave us that room for innovation. And it's then about how quickly can we process the idea from here into the market or into the business. And I used to talk a lot about Nordstrom as a really great example of how to do or how to build the right thing. Jeremy's an ex-ThoughtWorks. He joined Nordstrom a couple of years back. And this is on YouTube, so you can see all of this material on YouTube. He took a small team into the store, and he built their eyewear iPad application in 2 weeks. So they invested the time it took for the team to be on site in front of the customer, and they gathered the feedback into their the design and thinking process to actually build the right thing. And that's so important now, is that we have this fragmented, shattered future. It is actually how do we get as quickly as possible to understanding what the right thing is. And again, as Richard mentioned, when we started the OrderPad project, we've probably changed the scope by around 50%. It was exactly the same in Nordstrom. They went in with some big ideas and the exact hunches and all the things that they thought would work. They used the customer to actually tell them what was important, and it ended up being something very different. I'm really delighted to say that we do have our own real examples of this now in ThoughtWorks, and you'll be hearing from John Crosby and Barry later on today about this. How do we get to figuring out what the right thing is to build? And particularly in retail and mobile retail, it's about getting the utility right. I'm not going to steal John's thunder at all, but getting to the utility of an application will really make it work for the user. So I think about the things that I use on a daily basis. Barclays has been faffing around for many years with their website and mobile applications, but they finally got it right for me. So behind a 5-digit PIN, I can do everything I need to do with the bank, and the user experience is absolutely amazing. I love Skyscanner because actually it deals with the whole planning and booking a travel process in a very non-linear way. I can enter and leave wherever I want to. And I particularly love TripIt because it just takes care of all the stuff I get from booking travel, bungs it in one application, and sorts all of that out for me. So it's about getting down to this utility feature particularly within consumer applications. So I'm just going to touch a little bit on Dave Darby's slides to talk a little bit about how we transformed or helped to transform the store experience at JD Sports. So again, I'm back to my really rubbish links, 4 picks, 1 word. We've heard about lean startup, that's important. We've heard about Apple. We had a bunch of legacy to work with. I guess if you're probably over 35, you'll know who Monkey Magic is. Okay, so this is, again, YouTube Monkey Magic. This is cloud provisioning. This is absolutely amazing cloud provisioning. It's probably more specifically cloud summoning, but I guess the point is we were able to get our environments up and running within 1 or 2 weeks to actually build a solution that made JD Sports customers entirely happy. So again, we didn't take the risk of building the wrong thing. We went into the store with the team and we looked at and observed, store assistants, the dynamics of the store, and we just found some really odd things that we weren't expecting to see. This is absolutely, unashamedly a straight copy of the Apple store experience, and I've worked with Dave in the past. I've had the fortune to work with Disney Store on a similar kind of experience, and an even more fortunate experience to work with Victoria's Secret on their store experience. But the old way of doing that was a 6 to 12 month, very, very heavyweight, big engineering project. And we just looked at this and said, how can we do this differently? So we took the lean startup approach. Dave actually cleared the end of his desk, and we landed our very, very small team around his desk, and he became the product owner, and he was obsessed and lived the product. 7 weeks, we were actually able to get into a store and start to really test the application. Very quick kind of look through the happy path there. The really important points here is that there's a massive big accreditation process for us to go through to actually make that actually a viable solution to have in a store. So we got through a lot of the kind of hard work, the user assisted selling processes, logistics about where to detag, where to bag, where to print, how to do all of that kind of stuff very, very quickly. So we started knocking out all of those logistics challenges, even to the point where, I guess the CEO at JD Sports wanted a paperless store. So actually didn't even really want to have to print the receipt. But again, in testing with the customer's very uncomfortable if they're doing this for the first time about not walking away with something physical in their hand. So it's about understanding and learning from the customer about really what matters. So again, if we thought about that huge long list of stuff that we could have done in the store to start with, integrating with e-commerce, started to bring reviews in, more visual product info, we would have still been here right now, where actually we're in store, we're live, and JD Sports, through that kind of high watermark of Easter, absolutely road tested that application and increased their sales significantly in the stores because they have mobile POS. So as we move, just finishing now on moving across that access from the efficient to the responsive. I think the other interesting thing we see in the retail industry is, okay, so Morrisons have big vendor relationships, lots of the big retailers do, but actually as you move more towards that front face of the retail organisation, we see that the CEO is thinking more about these types of companies, how to be interactive with Google, how to defend my business from Amazon, but interestingly, how to make use of some of Amazon's web services. They actually build and provide web services that are absolutely, global retail standards. So why would we not use them? And we've used them recently on a couple of projects to get ourselves going, get ourselves up in an environment that we can have all of our environments ready to start developing, testing, and building. I think, in terms of the reflections in the news and the doom and gloom on the high street, it's actually not that bad in terms of the predictions of where this is going to go. We know, the rise and rise of online, the rise and rise of mobile, but I think the more important point is back to this customer experience. It's if we get the intersection right, we're actually significantly more successful. Just a couple of statistics on that. So, multi-channel customers spend between 15 and 30% more than a single-channel customer. So if you only have a store or you only are online, you wouldn't be able to expect that kind of uplift. An omni-channel customer, and we tend to define that as being seamless across all channels, so not kind of building our website very separate to our store operation, is another 15 to 30%. So I certainly don't have Horace's statistical computing abilities, but if I took £100 and I spent that with a retailer in one channel, if that retailer, for example, Argos, did something like click and collect and started to operate across different channels, I get an uplift of 30%. That's £130. And again, so I think John Lewis is the best example, really, in our space that we know about that is seeing that additional 30% of uplift on spend from customers. But I think in terms of the mobile frugal innovation, test and learn mentality, even our biggest and most successful retailers are doing this. And when Tesco launched in South Korea, they'd done their research enough to know that the South Koreans were time poor, hated grocery shopping, and actually struck up a new business model that they actually bought up advertising space at bus stops, metro stations, basically the dwell time places that people would hang out. They partnered with Samsung and they basically allowed the customer to shop, just really where it was convenient for them. So they did their online shopping model, really driven through mobile, but actually then a home delivery service. Off the back of that, they started to build out their store infrastructure, and it's a great success story for Tesco. So what did they do? Having tried it in another market, brought it back to the UK. So this is, one of the first trials or opportunities for Tesco to use that model in the UK, and this is at Gatwick Airport. So, you're going on holiday, you want to get your grocery things organised for when you get back, you can do that at the airport now. So, again, this fragmented future, we just have so many options, platforms and ways of selling to customers now. It's just mind-boggling. I guess a lot of you will have seen Kickstarter, but the whole idea that you can even just have a concept that you can put to market, that you can raise your finance and generate your customers in a single space is really mind-boggling. This was a new one to me. I spoke with Kate Trotter recently at British Library. It was a Trendsetters in Retail conference, and she talked about some of these things. I did not know that you could actually buy something with a tweet. You can actually buy something with a tweet now. So if you're on the Chirpify platform and something is coming through your social media space, you can actually literally just say buy and buy with a tweet. Incredible. So the online world is moving ever closer to the real world, to the store world. We talked with customers about what makes a good optimum delivery service, and we talked about 4 hours. We said that's not good enough. Retailers on the high street are actually really kind of fighting back now and using their stores as delivery points to enable them to achieve this really fast local delivery. Shuttle is actually a delivery company that's working with Argos. I guess in some stores now, you might even expect a queue for that long. I can order online and have that delivered to home. That's the fastest recorded delivery, 14 minutes and 58 seconds. It's just incredible. So even our biggest and most traditional retailers are really getting to grips now with what it means to empower the customer. So who would have thought Walmart, as one of the biggest retailers in the world, would give their customers the ability to scan and shop and walk out of a store with $200 worth of goods without having to pass a checkout or anything like that. For all that we've talked about today in terms of big data and mobile and you know, all these sophisticated tools that are at our disposal, I think really it's back to understanding the customer's primal need. Really what they want is availability, a good service, and ease of payment. So it's hard to draw conclusions from something that is so fragmented. But I guess really if we go so far in thinking about experience design, why is it that as a customer, I can't walk into a store today, get what I need, and walk out? This concept is being discussed with a client of ours in America, and it's really starting to think of this whole shopping experience from a completely different place. That I could somehow put some stuff in a bag. Maybe I walk out of a separate exit, which is RFID'd or scanned in some way, and I can just simply leave the store. That's really taking experience design to the extreme, but actually that really is the customer's dream and maybe something we should be thinking about solving. And that's our summary of some of the things that are going on in the retail industry space, how we're using big data and mobile to improve the customer's experience.